On a quiet Sunday evening in August 1971, millions of Americans were sitting down to watch Bonanza. Suddenly, the screen cut to black. President Richard Nixon appeared, looking directly into the lens with a gravity that usually signaled the start of a war. But he wasn't announcing an invasion. He was announcing a heist. In just 20 minutes, he would unilaterally sever the link between the US dollar and gold, effectively divorcing money from reality. He told the public he was protecting them. He was actually launching the most dangerous economic experiment in human history. This is how the world's money died. Since the end of World War II, the world operated on a golden rule. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, the US dollar was the world's anchor, and that anchor was chained to physical gold at $35 an ounce. If a foreign country didn't trust the dollar, they could bring their paper to the gold window at the Federal Reserve and trade it for the real thing. It was the ultimate safety net. But by the late 1960s, the net was fraying. America was fighting an expensive war in Vietnam and funding a massive social expansion at home. To pay for it, the government did what governments always do. They printed. Soon, there were far more dollars circling the globe than there was gold in Fort Knox. The world's bankers weren't stupid. They saw the math wasn't adding up. Led by the French, countries began demanding their gold back. Battleships literally arrived in New York Harbor to collect crates of bullion. America was facing a global run on the bank, and for the first time in history, the wealthiest nation on Earth was staring at a total liquidity collapse. The decision to end the gold standard didn't happen in a public debate. It happened in total secrecy over a single weekend at Camp David. Nixon summoned 15 of his top advisors, including a young Paul Volcker and the aggressive Treasury Secretary John Connally. They were told to leave their staffs behind. No one in the State Department was informed. Not even the International Monetary Fund knew what was happening. The atmosphere in that cabin was electric with tension. Nixon's advisors knew that closing the gold window would be seen as an act of financial war by America's allies. It was a default on a global scale. But Connally, a blunt Texan, didn't care about the gentlemen's agreements of the past. Famously told the Europeans, "The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem." They spent the weekend drafting a speech that would reframe a national bankruptcy as a bold act of economic liberation. They weren't just changing a policy. They were creating a new world order where the United States could print its way out of any problem. When the sun rose on Monday morning, the world woke up to a new reality: fiat money. Fiat is a Latin word meaning "let it be done." It means the paper in your wallet has value only because the government says it does. Or 1971, if the government wanted to spend $1 billion, they theoretically had to find $1 billion worth of gold to back it up. After the Nixon shock, that limit vanished. Printing press was finally unchained. This was the birth of the modern financial matrix. Without the anchor of gold, the value of every currency on Earth began to float, or more accurately, to sink. Government promised that this was a temporary measure to stabilize the economy, but history shows that temporary is the most dangerous word in politics. By removing the physical limit on money, Nixon gave every future politician a magic wand to fund wars, bailouts, and programs, never having to ask the taxpayers for permission. He simply diluted the value of the money already in your pocket. The immediate result of the Nixon shock wasn't prosperity, it was chaos. Throughout the 1970s, inflation exploded. Since the dollar was no longer tied to anything real, its purchasing power began to evaporate. This is the moment the cost of living became a permanent uphill battle for the middle class. If you look at a chart of productivity versus wages, you'll see they moved together for decades until 1971. That is the year they decoupled. Workers were producing more than ever, but their fiat wages couldn't keep up with the rising prices of bread, gas, and housing. This is the invisible tax. The government didn't have to raise your income tax to pay for its debts. They simply made the currency you earned worth less. For the first time, a single-income family started to struggle. The American dream of a house, a car, yet in a stable future started to require 2 incomes, then 3, then debt. We were taught to blame greedy corporations or global events, but the true culprit was sitting in the Oval Office on that Sunday night in August. Today, we look at a U.S. national debt of $34 trillion and wonder how we got here. The answer is 1971. In the 50 years before the Nixon shock, the national debt was relatively stable. In the 50 years since, it has gone vertical. When money is backed by nothing, debt becomes a choice rather than a consequence. We are living in a house of cards built on the foundation laid at Camp David. For the financial historian, 1971 is year zero. It is the moment we traded hard money for easy debt. It explains why your savings account pays you almost nothing while the price of assets like real estate and stocks soar out of reach for the average person. The elite, who own the assets, get richer as more money is printed. The workers, who earn the paper, get poorer. The gold window is still closed. The printing presses are still running, and the temporary measure has become our permanent reality, Nixon's ghost still haunts every ATM and every bank statement in the world. The government was supposed to protect the value of your labor. Since 1971, the dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. If you hired a bank to guard your life savings and they lost 85% of it, would you keep your money there? In our next episode, we're going to look at the man who broke a central bank, the 1992 Black Wednesday crisis. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You need to understand these shifts because they explain why you feel poorer, even when you're working harder. My question for you, was Nixon a pragmatist, saving the US from bankruptcy, or a villain who destroyed the world's money? Let me know in the comments. Class dismissed.